Welcome back to Politics HQ News Central Television. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been dragged to the ECOWAS court by the Egalitarian Mission for Africa over plans to oppose Niger's current junta. The group queried the Nigerian president and the rest of ECOWAS for planning such an attack. The planned attack on the junta is believed to run foul of the current treaties guiding the conduct of member nations of ECOWAS. President Tinubu is the current chairman of ECOWAS and has been advised along various quarters to shelve ECOWAS's proposed plan to invade Niger and attack the junta. Joining me tonight to discuss this is Asemota, Executive Director, Africa Youth and Agribusiness Organization. Very warm welcome to you, Uyi, and thanks for joining us on Politics HQ. Now, let's start off with what you make of the coup. Was it expected? And I mean, the ECOWAS did issue an ultimatum for the junta to restore democratic process, which they failed to do. The ultimatum has expired, and ECOWAS is yet to take action. What do you make of these scenarios that have played out in Niger?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and I think, first of all, the coup came as a shock to everybody. I know even the reaction of ECOWAS in the first place shows you how they didn't see it coming, and I think there was even news, there even was on the street that the leader of the junta was actually very, very close to the president, and everybody saw him as a person
yes,
that
he was
like,
head of the presidential
exactly.
guard. Yes.
So where he got to the point where everything just turned around, and the president, they seized the president and want to kick him out, and seize power came as a shock, and everyone was kind of like waiting for what would happen, and ECOWAS, I would say, rushed into giving the ultimatum, trying to see that, because the way it happened, it was so fast and kind of like unprecedented. They thought they didn't know these guys were that prepared to take it and hold it down. They thought the ultimatum would make them say, look at it and just...
Like what happened in Gambia with
exactly.
Jammeh.
Yeah, exactly. They thought, okay, when they say that and they give the ultimatum, these guys will fizzle out and just hand over power and just maybe like, but now we are seeing that it is what it is, and these guys are really, really, really prepared, yeah.
So there are two things in the minds of ECOWAS leaders. They believe in democratic governance and the democratic process. There's also the fear of a contagion effect of these coups, because in the last 5 years, we've seen several coups, especially in the West African belt. Now that ECOWAS leaders are going to meet in Abuja tomorrow, and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has said, the military option is still on the table. Do you think they will really carry out their threats, or they would sit back and explore other diplomatic options?
I think, I don't want to preempt what will be the outcome of the meeting, but from the body language of, listening to the president's spokesman yesterday, President Tinubu's spokesman yesterday, he was talking about the fact that every option is still on the table. They will still have to go on with whatever options they planned, especially being that most of the envoy that they've sent to meet with the junta, to negotiate with them, at a point now they don't even want to meet with anybody and don't want to talk with anybody. So it's like the only option left is them just taking it by force. But we really need to look at this like to be circumspect in looking at this, because now
look at all the possible scenarios.
Yes, it's like ECOWAS has exhausted all the diplomatic, let me say the diplomatic means of using the non-violent means to kind of talk to these people. They've resisted it and they don't want to talk anymore. And now the only option that is left that is looking like force is something that is going to boomerang on West Africa as a whole, especially looking at Nigeria, because on the streets of Niger right now, it is being seen as President Tinubu is actually against Niger people.
Oh yes, we've seen the protests, the placards, and they're not really happy. And then there's this other side of popularity amongst the people of Niger. So who is ECOWAS to come in and say, look, we don't... They will be going against popular opinion if they invade. Now, last week, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did meet with northern governors, northern governors who share a border with Niger, and they've been calling for coup heads. Even though Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune did call for coup heads and, try other diplomatic options. Everyone is saying look, we can't go into Niger. We're still reeling from the consequences of NATO's invasion of Libya, the proliferation of small arms in the West African sub-region, these terrorists that are taking over the Sahel, is as a result of the blowback. Now that the president has this feedback, and ECOWAS also needs to show some toughness and save face. What should be the next option? Because like you said, the junta is digging in. They don't seem to want to back out.
No,
It's consolidating power, and they have the people behind them.
Exactly. I think from that point, I think what ECOWAS would have done in the first place, and they can still do, is to try to make the people of Niger know that whatever they are doing is for the benefit of the people of Niger. Because right now, they see the military, the junta, as those that really have their interests at heart.
As saviors.
So first of all, ECOWAS needs to save its face and be able to communicate with these people. In the first place, I think this is a test for ECOWAS. If you talk about, it's supposed to be economic community of West African states. If you even look at some of the things that have been happening, ECOWAS has failed in so many ways. Like now, it's just like ECOWAS coming out of the blues, and now because one of the leaders...
the damage has been
done. The damage has been done, even crossing within the border. I do business in Niger, and crossing within the border, you say free movement of persons and goods. ECOWAS has not been able to enforce that. People still find it difficult to move goods from... there was a time I bought some oranges and avocado pear from Cameroon. I was taking it to Kusiri. The problem I had at the border, I had to call a government official on the other side of the border to be able to cross me. And you said free movement of persons and goods. So when you fail in some strategic points of the treaty, of the tenants that united you, if you fail in those areas, you won't just come out of the blues and say you want to talk to a people you have not been able to carry along in the first place. So first, ECOWAS need to be able to sell itself to the people, that is for the people, because in Niger right now, ECOWAS is saying, let me say, President Tinubu, the chairman of ECOWAS, is seen as a person that is anti the Niger people. So first, ECOWAS needs to save its face and be able to sell themselves to the people that we are here for you. If you now the next thing is to sit on the table and ask the people, not the juntas, the people, what do you want? Now the civil society organizations are the one organizing the rallies and moving around. So ECOWAS should go for this civil society.
Talk to the people.
Talk to the people, because now the military are not ready, because they are also afraid to sit with some of these people. Like you are sending delegates to sit with them and stuff. So something can happen. They are military men, and they know what can happen. So they don't want to interface with these people. So why not move back a bit, relax?
You know the reason why the Niger junta said they don't want to interface with them, because ECOWAS did try to send a delegation to Niamey. They said, look, we can't guarantee your security. The ordinary people of Niger think you're enemies, and you've already instituted strong sanctions against our country. So we can't guarantee your security when you are in town. So as a result of that, please stay
because
away.
They are also high. If you see the trick, this military junta, they are so smart. If you see the trick they are trying to play right now, they are telling you, you've already triggered the people. We are trying to save the people. You trigger the people with a sanction. Like just 2 days ago, I called my assistant back there in Niger, and like, how are you doing and stuff like that. Oh, alhamdulillah, we are fine, but there is no water, there is no light, we are fine. God sent rain. So your president cut us off from light and cut us off from water, trying to make life unbearable, but God is saving us.
Which was in violation of a treaty back in the days. Now let's look at the... I'm happy you mentioned Nigeria disconnected Niger from electricity, because it said that Nigeria does supply the Nigerian government 70% of their electricity. Now, ECOWAS has played their cards. They have cut off electricity. Nigerian government has shut their borders. President Tinubu did pass new sanctions yesterday to freeze accounts of those who might be in support or are instrumental to the junta. So 3. And then the Nigerian junta is consolidating. They've shut down their airspace and they've done 1 or 2 things. So is ECOWAS out of sanctions? What other diplomatic means can they pursue to come to a reasonable negotiation to avoid war? Or is war the last option?
In my candid opinion, war seems to be the last option, but an option I would not advise ECOWAS to take in my opinion, because it's going to the effect is going to be much. Not just on Niger, for example. Okay, you are going to war, for example. Who are you going to war with? Is it the junta? How are you going to isolate the members of the junta and fight with them and take power from them without affecting the citizens which you claim to want to protect? Right.
So, I mean, and it's not like those olden days where you assemble armies on a mountain.
Exactly, and you just go there and fight and take them out of the city and fight. So it's going to be you fighting with the people, because the people are going to, one, resist any force they see that is coming into Niger, for example. That's one. And two, I think there is this kickback effect when you throw something to someone, the equal reaction will want to come.
Yes.
So now they've closed their airspace, and Mali and Burkina Faso has also said they are backing these people
that
up.
component.
Before you know, now these guys are going to close their airspace. I think you've noticed that flight ticket has increased since 4 days ago.
Yes, because civilian airlines have to bypass Niger when going to Europe.
That is just one of the stuff that is going to happen. And if you look at the dynamics between the workings between Nigeria, Cameroon, Benin Republic, and Chad, you will realize that this war or subtle war that is about to happen, if it goes on, is seriously on.
Now let me ask you. I want you to put on your agribusiness hat. You're someone that does business in that region.
Yeah.
What does it mean for ordinary Nigerians and Nigerians? How has their businesses and their normal lives been disrupted? Because these sanctions will not only hurt Niger, it would also hurt Nigerians. So how are they coping, and what are the long-term effects?
It's going to be massive. Let me give you an example. The last time President Buhari, former President Buhari, closed the border, the loss I encountered personally as a businessman doing business between Niger and Nigeria almost kicked me out of business, like completely. I was almost down, right? That is just me as a person. Most of the goods that is consumed in Niger, for example, biscuits, sometimes pure water, comes from Nigeria. There are plastics and everything. These guys depend on Nigeria for most of this stuff. If you go to the Ilela border or you go to the Castina border, you will see these things passing from Nigeria. Every of those things were cut off during that time. And at a point, most of these things became so expensive in Niger that they could not really cope. It was chaotic.
Yeah, because people had to smuggle.
That was just, the smuggling was at another level, right? So that was just closing of border. Now imagine when there is now a case where you have to fight with people. Border is closed, people are running for their life, security is at another level, people die. A whole lot is going to happen. In the agric sector, there's going to be famine, because sometimes most of this hibiscus flower we get them from Niger. Some of this ginger will get them, some of these tiger nuts will get them from Niger. Some of these agro products will get them from Niger. They get from us as well. So that is not going to happen. A whole lot is going to be incurred to the farmers, especially in Nigeria, that supplies maize to them and supply millets to them, as the case may be. And the insecurity is going to quadruple. In short, you can't even say that, because
I mean, for you to say this from just from your interaction as a businessman that does business in that region, you've had the ECOWAS heads of states meet. ECOWAS defense chiefs also met in Abuja a few weeks ago. And they're going to meet again tomorrow. They have intelligence reports, they have their ministers, they have ambassadors, they have diplomatic entreaties. Do you think that they are not thinking deep enough? Because from what you just laid out in less than 2 minutes, it paints a picture of doom and gloom if they do go ahead with this invasion. And these sanctions hurt the people. The ordinary Nigerians and Nigerians that do business. So are there any options apart from sanctions? And because the sanctions hurt the ordinary people of Niger. You've cut off the electricity. The junta is going to put on their generator. They won't be affected by that. And they seem to have the backing of the people. So are there any options left for ECOWAS?
I think ECOWAS should relax the sanctions. Relaxing the sanctions will make these people want to talk.
Yes.
Yeah, so you know what? We were at Rush, we really did not understand the situation. Sometimes claiming ignorance will also help in the situation. Let them relax the sanctions. If the sanctions are relaxed a bit, these people will want to listen. Right, these protests you see at the square and every of those stuff will reduce to a very large extent. You'll be able to talk with these people. Secondly, you need to, like I said earlier, talk with these people. What do they really want? Is it the state president that is the problem, or the problem is with something? So they need to find out what the problem is. Not because ECOWAS is just standing and like, let that president, if you want to talk with us, let that president comes back before we want to talk with you. That might not work. You can't negotiate with them. First of all, they are not sure that the President Boso is safe. Like there's not that arms race. So relax the sanctions, talk with these people, and move them towards if the military, I think there have been a situation where the military hold powers for some time. Negotiate time with them, even if it was 1 year. You know what? ECOWAS is for democratically elected president. If you say you want to seize power, good. Tell us within the space of 6 months, organize another election. Maybe also can be appealed to resign, and if he resigns, they conduct another election, and everything goes back to normal. I think that would be a more peaceful way to go about it, because the war or going by force will not work.
Now let's look at let's X-ray ECOWAS over the last years. Some of President George Weah did call out ECOWAS's hypocrisy, that when civilians perpetrate themselves and sit tight in power, Alpha Conde is an example, Alassane Ouattara is another example, Blaise Compaoré, and even Chad. Idriss Déby Mahamat. It was not supposed to. Chad is not a monarchy.
Just remove the uniform.
Yes, and you know the Western world is fine with that, and they don't say much, and they wait till they've crossed the Rubicon when these military boys take over. How can they be more proactive in influencing governance? You did, and doing what ECOWAS is meant to do. You did talk about bringing fruits in. It says, the treaty says freedom of movement of persons and goods. So it doesn't seem to work. So in what ways would you want ECOWAS to X-ray and look within themselves to be more responsive to the needs of not the heads of states, because the heads of states, it's like an old boys club, but to the ordinary people, the ordinary citizens of West Africa? Yeah,
I think one of the ways to go about it, the first one I would recommend would be the fact that ECOWAS should not be selective in what they want to implement according to the laws setting them up. You cannot decide and say this can work and this cannot work. When Nigeria closed the border against Niger for close to 2 years, what did ECOWAS do about it? And when Nigeria closed the borders to every other West African countries, what did Nigeria do? This is that was a
very recent history.
Yes, very recent history, and nothing was done about it. Mali is under military regime right now. What about Burkina Faso? What did ECOWAS really do about it? So it is looking like when the narrative suits a kind of like an agenda. Let me use the word an agenda lightly here. An agenda of what ECOWAS think can benefit in a way. They seem to pay a blind eye to. So ECOWAS must be seen as not paying a blind eye to any point of the laws that governs them. Look at the ECOWAS court. Sometimes when I hear pronouncements from the ECOWAS court, I usually laugh because presidents can just decide not to obey it. What about the pronouncements of the ECOWAS court about those that were jailed illegally in Nigeria and every other stuff? None was respected.
It's almost like...
what did ECOWAS do about it?
Just an exercise in futility. And that brings me to this question, Uyi. There's an organization, Egalitarian Mission for Africa. They have decided to take action against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and others for their proposed military intervention in Niger Republic. They've taken these governments to the ECOWAS court. You know, they always say go to court. So they've gone to court. What do you anticipate the outcome will be, even if the ECOWAS court gives a favorable judgment in favor of this Egalitarian Mission for Africa group?
Yeah, you know, I will be careful not to preempt what the court might decide, because that might be prejudice. But if the court even give a judgment, going by the antecedents and some of the stuff that have happened in the past, maybe the government might even flaunt it because they feel it's more what they want to achieve. But
yes, it might be a face-saving way.
But I think it's a very nice move. I even commend the organization, because they are giving the president, the chairman of ECOWAS, a very good leverage to turn back and start again. Because if he can really give the excuse and say somebody has taken, an organization has taken us to court, we really need to tread carefully without even having to be as if you are saving face. So you can actually now turn back and begin to follow and say, fine, these people have taken us to court, and the court gives a judgment, okay, let's roll it back and every of this stuff. And it's also very good that an organization is coming on headed by a Nigerian, and the lawyer is also a Nigerian, fighting for the people of Nigeria, and say, yeah, fine, President, you can't do this, you are my president, I know, but you can't do this to another country. I think it's a very good thing, showing that brotherliness And because
Yes.
Niger is seen as Nigeria, Burkina Faso, they are seen as our brothers, and
We
we're
share
supposed
the
to
same
move.
type of
We share the
kinship
same,
and culture.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very good one from the organization, and I really pray the judgment goes in favor of the organization and the government obeys it, because it's going to really help to kind of quench the anger both in the Niger side and be able to give leverage to the leadership of ECOWAS to be able to do
Now,
something.
Uyi, history does teach us lessons. You look back at history and hindsight, and you say, you know, ECOWAS did this, it was successful. Why can't we do this again?
Yeah.
You remember the role the ECOWAS monitoring group played in ending the civil war in Sierra Leone,
Sierra Leone,
Liberia,
the
and also in the recent history of just their threat to Yahya Jammeh after he lost a democratically contested election. He planned to sit tight, and ECOWAS gave him an ultimatum. He didn't think they were bluffing, and he left. He's now in exile in Equatorial Guinea. Why is the Nigerian situation different, and why is the junta not falling for ECOWAS' threat of military intervention?
I believe they are being emboldened, I would say emboldened
yes.
by the fact that Mali did it and they were successful, and they are even becoming a face of liberation for Africa. Right now, this Guinea, Mali, they are seen as Burkina Faso, they are seen as liberating force for Africa. Now, it's not as if they are talking about that. So they've seen it happen in Mali, and they're successful. They saw it happen in Burkina Faso, and so they are emboldened in a way. And these people quickly, they are pledging allegiance, and we are in support and everything of this stuff. So that's one point they are being. And the second one is the fact that when the people is behind you, whether you are the weakest of all, you have the highest power. So the people are behind them. So they want to, even if they want to back out, they look at their people and like, these people are behind me.
We can't fail them.
Even if you want to come and shell them, and they can just put their people at the front, and people will start. With the Nigerians, I know, they respect their militaries, and they respect them so much. Because I will give you an example. There was one time I was going to Sengeji to go and buy products. That was the first time I'll be seeing a rope. A roadblock was just a rope, a very tiny rope tied across the road. I saw that every one of them got there, and every of the cars queued behind the rope. The policemen were not there. The policemen were at the side. They stood behind the rope, went to the policemen, settled with them, gave them the stuff, and came back. If it was Nigeria, we'll run past. It was just a tiny rope and everything. So that shows you the level of respect they give to this people. So if those people match them to the streets, that's what is happening right now. They will go and they will respect them because,
I mean, they've been pushed to the wall.
Yes, they've been
now let's talk about this other narrative of that there's some analysts that say, you know, there are people behind the strings that are pushing ECOWAS. There was a cartoon yesterday in one of the newspapers, the caricature of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, poking ECOWAS to go and, you know, enter Niger and invade Niger. Looking at European interest in Niger, the uranium that is mined in Niger is of national security importance to France because of energy security and strategic interests. The United States also has a drone base, and then some European countries have a few soldiers there. So Niger is very critical to this Western nation. So they say that, you know, these Europeans are using ECOWAS, the ones behind ECOWAS, pushing them to go to war. What do you make of this? Yeah,
I think that's almost like what will always come up whenever there is crisis anywhere in Africa. And some researchers have gone into research, and they've also kind of like pinpoint some scenarios and some points where some of these things were true. I might not be able to sit down here and say, oh yeah, maybe France is behind and every of those stuff. But whenever anything is happening within the Francophone countries, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon, especially the one I know, there's always that element of the influence of France, because most of the time they pay homage to France, they pay allegiance to France, and most of their stuff goes to France and every of those stuff. So it might be, but I can't tell because I don't have evidence and I can't prove it like so. It could be, and being that most of the time you hear there is crisis in countries, most of the time it's always surrounding mineral resources and every of those stuff, and uranium seems to be one of the greatest, one of the minerals now that is at that is needed within production, and everybody wants to go
Yes.
for it, and Chad, Niger has a lot of it in abundance. I think it might not be far from it, but the thing is, when as the France, for example, begin to animate Nigeria, so if you want to look at it that way, I don't feel that maybe it's France that is animating President Tinubu, but I feel President Tinubu, he just got into power, has a lot in court he's dealing with and trying to settle the country.
Also the ECOWAS
and he was
chairman.
just elected as ECOWAS chairman. And when he was giving his speech as the ECOWAS chairman, he actually made a pronouncement and said, coup and military intervention will no longer be tolerated. So if a president has given that, he has to back it up.
Talk with action.
So it might just be that is what is motivating him to do this. It might not necessarily be maybe somebody pulling it before, but if somebody is pulling it, we just hope it does not stimulate in war. Yeah.
Now, looking at the history of Niger, Niger is said to be the second poorest country in the world, and this country has vast deposits of uranium. And it's been having strong relationships with France. There's a French nuclear giant in Arlit, Arriva, and other French business interests in Niger. Why is Niger still this poor after so many years of independence from France? Is it a matter of democracy or military intervention? And I also saw Russian flags in the stadium being hoisted, and you know, people were praising Russia. When will Africans and Nigerians come to their own rescue and not think some foreigner will be their savior? Because if you leave France, you're going into the hands of Russia or the Chinese. When can we, and what will it take to take our destiny in our hands?
Yeah, I think to a very large extent, African leaders need to sit up. Maybe this can be a wake-up call to many African leaders and those of us, both African leaders and civil society organizations. Of a truth, the poverty in Niger is so much. Sometimes you wonder how these people are able to pull through their day-to-day life with their level. See the road, they graded their road, their grades. B road is sand, right? You drive through the sand and you're just like, it's only their grade A road. Sometimes they're not even tired and they call it a grade A road. The level of poverty is so much. Why even in that same environment, you are seeing that you will see one shiny house that when you enter the house, so the level of the distance between the inequality is so much. And secondly, this is peculiar to the Francophone countries. I think really when people begin to finger France as being like, I think France really need to France need to be introspective at this point and also look at it. Talk about Chad, talk about Niger, talk about Cameroon. The level of poverty is so much, and most of the time their leaders they determine subtly who is the leader and who
I mean, you look at a country like Cameroon, for example. Paul Biya has been president for 43 years. You look at Gabon, former French colony. The Bongo family has been ruling for over 50 years. And Bongo, who is suffering from a stroke, still has decided to go for a third term. So you're very right about introspection. And when these military boys come in and say, look, we want to sever relationships with France, this is what happens. So why do you think France has so much hold on its former colonies as opposed to, let's say, former Portuguese colonies or even English colonies?
I think one of the things I discovered, I work among the youth as the African Youth and Agribusiness Organization. Most of the youths are not informed. If you check, there was a group I was working with, and one of the problems they had was being able to understand some of these dynamics of things that happens. In terms of, if you talk about the materials they read, they are not enlightened in this way. That's why if you see most of these Francophone countries, they don't even have enough materials. For example, I can pick a newspaper now and pick this thing, but they will have to pick a newspaper from France. And every of those, so they will have to pick those things. So in terms of knowledge
and
narratives, their narrative, what they understand is what is passed down to them, and that is one. But again, I think these young African leaders that are trying to pull things out also need to be careful about what I would call the handout kind of help. Because most of the Francophone countries, they've been so conditioned to depend on take. and take without being able
Aid.
to fend for themselves.
Yes.
Like you design a beautiful project right now and take it to Niger, for example, and you want to implement it and say you bring them to go to the farm, like, because that's what I do to train, and at the end of the day, whatever you harvest, they are not interested in that. Just take them, train them in that point where you are training them, give them what to eat at that moment, give them those coins. They are okay with it. They don't want to, they don't
see long term.
They don't see long term. So you will not blame them, because most of the interventions.
Whole generation that has been born post-independence
that
believes, oh, France is a savior
and
aid is the way to go. You
Exactly.
have aid-dependent countries. And the late leader of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara, did say that he who feeds you controls you.
Controls
so
you.
I guess that's
and if
where
you look at the Russia, you asked initially that why is it that they're navigating towards Russia? Remember the last Russia-Africa meeting that was held?
Yes.
Putin actually promised grains.
For free.
For free. So if you see most of the, okay, you've cut these guys off now from the border, and somebody is promising them, don't worry, I'll open the grain tree and those things, and everybody is in their flag. Where they are also going back to what they are running from, because no country will just give out money for free and give those things for free without interest.
These things have conditions.
Exactly.
And there's no...
So African leaders need to sit back and start creating things within ourselves and depend on ourselves. Yeah.
Now let's look at this. You did talk about the complex dynamics in the West African region. Let's go back to this case that will be instituted at the ECOWAS court against Nigeria's president and ECOWAS leaders. What do you think the legal action or this impact of it will be on the delicate balance of power and diplomatic relations among ECOWAS members, especially between Niger and Nigeria?
I think if handled carefully now being that don't in a forceful manner or war resulting to war, is going to further strengthen the relationship between the ECOWAS countries. I think President Tinubu, as the ECOWAS chair right now, has the opportunity to build that ties that binds Africa again, right? I don't think it's time for him to try to want to disconnect the ties, because whatever is being proposed will certainly disconnect the remaining. You've lost Mali, you've lost Burkina Faso, you will still lose Niger, and before you know it, you lose some of these countries. So if handled carefully and some of these legal actions, civil points are followed, I think it will further strengthen the ties within ECOWAS. And ECOWAS need to really be ECOWAS. That's Economic Community of West. The economy needs to now cohere. We need to even buy from ourselves in the first place. We need to
have true freedom of people and goods.
Nigeria, for example, can supply fuel to Niger, and there will be no need to smuggle and every of those stuff. It is because you don't.
Man, these are just common sense.
Exactly. So a lot of industries that are producing in Nigeria can have theirs. They are selling bees and every of those stuff instead of them bringing biscuits from China. Because most of the biscuits they eat now is from China. Because after that closure of the border for that time, they started resorting to China. Sardine is from China. So most of this stuff.
Which is killing our economy.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a very good opportunity for the ECOWAS leadership to be able to forge that ties that will continue to strengthen it, and they need to pay rapt attention to the Francophone countries. Whether ECOWAS will survive or not is going to be depending on how they handle the Francophone countries right now, and they're almost slipping out of hands. And
there are dangers because the jihadists could slip into coastal states. Ghana has never recorded an attack in the past, but we've seen Ivory Coast countries like Togo and Benin have been recording attacks in the northern part. So if you don't deal with this, it could spread across the entire West African sub-region. Now let's track back a bit and look at what happened before the ultimatum was issued. The Chief of Defense Staffs of ECOWAS countries met in Abuja. And I believe these are war veterans, they are five-star generals and senior commanders in the military. And after that, we don't know what happened. But after their meeting, they must have given feedback to their commanders-in-chief, the presidents of their countries. And then ECOWAS came out and said, look, we're giving you 7 days to return Bazoum back to power, or we'll intervene militarily. Do you think the advice of the defense chiefs was to intervene? Because they have the figures. They do know, even from a layman's point of view, I know that invading Niger will not be the best option.
If I was doing something in the media, for example, and I come to you and say, advise me, the advice you give to me will be towards media. You are calling war veterans, those that are thirsty for war. War is their business. And to give you an advice, because really, if you look at the antecedent of the fact that some countries have been taking over, it's just a matter of telling President Tinubu, they are coming. They will certainly come and take you.
You can sell it.
You can sell it easily. So the persons you are asking are pro-war people that want to go to war, that want to mobilize people, that enjoys war. You are asking them for advice. That is the only advice they will give you is from their point of expertise. So sometimes you won't blame them. That's what they have made. That was what they were trained to do, and that's why before you even retire them, you have to demilitarize them. So they will give you the military approach. But did they also sit the economists down? Did they also sit the social scientists down? Did they sit the people down and also ask them and say, hey, see what is happening?
Humanitarians.
Exactly. Even the civil society organizations right now that is on the street protesting, did they really sit them down and ask them, okay, see what is happening, what do we do next, and stuff like that? So if they just decide to run with that, now we're also asking them, please run with the civil society's request and the civilians' request. Yeah.
Finally, Uyi, before I let you go, could you elaborate on the effectiveness of ECOWAS in mediating conflicts and maintaining regional stability? How have they fared so far in doing that? If you can in less than a minute, I would appreciate
I think they've really not fared too well. Yeah, they've really not fared too well in that regard. Being that the Mali is still there, Burkina Faso is still there, some of these countries are still undergoing some of these things, and nothing has been done about it, and it's as if nothing will be done about it. I think they've really not fared well in that regard, and that might be what is spiraling to what we see today. Yeah, really. Yeah.
Okay, it's a fast developing situation. We'll definitely monitor events in Niger. Uyi Asemota, Executive Director, African Youth and Agribusiness Organization. I do appreciate your insights and contribution to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're watching Politics HQ. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll be looking at the performance of Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma, which has always divided opinions. His performance as governor has also seen him rise gradually in national politics. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.